All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA props video. Going to be breaking down the top prop bets here for this Wednesday slate. It's a two-game slate, so we're going to give you guys a game-by-game breakdown. Let's start off here with the Atlanta Hawks versus the New York Knicks. And so for the Atlanta Hawks, they are coming into this game with a lot of players currently questionable. Trae Young's listed as questionable, but he is expected to play in this game. Jalen Johnson is someone that is truly questionable. If he were to sit, that's going to create some pretty good edges for us on the slate, which I'll touch on here in just a second. One of those players that would benefit a lot if Jalen Johnson were to sit is going to be Bogdanovich, but he is also someone that's currently questionable. If one or the other sits, that's going to create a decent amount of value for the other player. So it's kind of a guessing game there. DeAndre Hunter, questionable, but he is expected to play in this game as well. And so we have the top prop bets here pulled up on the 9-to-5 PrizePicks cheat sheet here, looking at Atlanta. And instantly, I think I don't exactly like any of the bets that we are currently getting here for Atlanta. We are getting some prop bets for Jalen Johnson. That points to him probably playing, and we're also not getting prop bets for Bogdanovich. That points to him potentially sitting in this game. And so one of the bets I actually like a little bit in this game is going to be looking at Trae Young to get under 11.5 assists. Now, we are seeing that the average sportsbook line is slightly favoring the over here of 11.5, giving it a 51% likelihood to hit. So not a bet that we need to go crazy with, but I do think it's worth calling out kind of the games that Trae Young has had against New York, or game against New York thus far. So looking at it, guys, in the first game that they met, Trae Young ended up getting only 10 assists in that game. We do see averages 12.2 on the season here. He gets a matchup here with the New York Knicks, who only give up about an average of 9.3, which is about the 8th most difficult matchup in terms of point guards for their assists. Now, that's not anything crazy, but the New York Knicks are 6.5-point favorites in this game, which if this game does end up being, a little bit of potential for a blowout, that could limit the minutes that Trae Young does get, which then would obviously increase the likelihood of him getting the under here. Now, I do think it's worth calling out with Trae Young that he is very much hit or miss, which really does depend on really just, I think, his teammates being hit or miss as well. And I would say that if Jalen Johnson and Bogdanovich are going to be out as well, that would actually increase the likelihood for his under assist to be a bet that we should be targeting. But we do see the spikes. 10 against Denver, then 27, and then 15, and then 5. So definitely all over the place there. This is one where, honestly, I could look very stupid with this one, or very smart. Like, game log tells us that there's not that much in between, at least lately, but it does, I think, depend a little bit on that injury report. So another bet here that I actually don't mind would be Clint Capela to get under his rebounds here of 9.5, and a lot of people are going to see the last 5 average and not like that. I'll pull up the average sportsbook line so we can take a peek at that, but let me present the reasons why I don't like this over. One, in his last game against New York, he ended up having 6 rebounds in that game. Now, his production has definitely been more steady and has spiked more recently than what it was earlier on in the season, which is when that matchup with New York took place. Got about the same minutes that we do expect him to get, but him not having a good rebounding night against New York is not surprising. They are the toughest matchup for opposing centers, for opposing bigs in general. They average only 12.8 rebounds per game to opposing bigs, which again, least amount of rebounds given up to opposing bigs. Now, this is one that I'm kind of happy to see that the data is at least somewhat agreeing with me here. We're going to see that he's projected to only get 23 minutes, which that could change if Jalen Johnson does end up playing. He does get a slight bump in his rebounds, about 1.5 more rebounds per 36. Now, he probably won't get 36 minutes. Maybe he gets to like 30 in this game if Jalen Johnson were to sit. So it's still not a lock and load, but other than that, it's pretty likely that he does end up getting the under here. And so real quickly, let's just talk about the increase in production for Bogdanovich if we get news that Jalen Johnson is indeed out. He is the player that does benefit the most with him off the court. He averages 5.6 more points per 36, and then he also averages about 1.8 more rebounds per 36 as well. Now, will he get 36 minutes? I don't know. Probably not. But if Jalen Johnson is out, you would imagine that it does get closer to like 32 minutes or so. So, there is an opportunity for him to be undervalued in terms of which bets we're looking at. Now, I did say that for Cole Anthony for Tuesday night, and I was 100% correct with that take, but he's 2 for 12. So, just a terrible night shooting. That always does happen. That's always in the realm of possibilities, but we do know that there should be an increase in production for Bogdanovich there. Now let's go ahead and jump on into the New York Knicks. I actually don't mind betting on Karl Anthony Towns in this game for his over rebounds here, which he's been just crushing this over recently, and his line is at a high line. It's at 13.5, which is pretty high. But again, kind of just going back to his matchup earlier against Atlanta, he was able to get 16 in that game, and he really went off in this last game against Atlanta as well, 34 points in that game. And he has been someone that has just been dominating recently. And so I'm more on board with betting Towns just to kind of expect that to continue, especially with the heavy minutes that he has been getting as well. That does kind of increase his floor there. And apologies, the line is at 12.5 rebounds, so a little bit better actually than what I was just thinking, but still about a 50-50 split per Vegas. Now, again, this is early. I'm recording this the night before. The whole purpose of that is so that we can potentially gain some edges on some bets. We were able to do that for the Tuesday slate. Whether or not those bets hit, still TBD, but we'll see. That's kind of how I feel about Karl-Anthony Towns here with his over 12.5 rebounds. I kind of think like that correlates decently well with Capela not getting his over rebounds as well. And it's a bet there where if you do that, you're not getting penalized for that correlated bet slip. Now, it is worth calling out that Josh Hart is currently in jeopardy of missing this game as well. It's kind of up in the air. We don't know for sure. We are getting some lines for him, but if he were to sit, there is really just one player that benefits the most in terms of like players that we would want to be trying to bet on, and that'd be OG here. And I think we could be looking at his over points. He does average 21.2 points per 36 with Josh Hart off the court, which is a decent increase in production for him. We see the average sportsbook line lights it at 16.5. We are seeing, strangely enough, though, that PrizePicks has bumped this to 17, which is a little bit strange. Another way to get some exposure to him would be his over PRA. We are seeing that Vegas does somewhat like that, 51.7% likelihood for that one to hit. But then we look at his points and assists. That one's a little bit lower. Projection data likes the over form regardless in this matchup, which is certainly interesting there. But again, with Josh Hart, we are getting prop lines for him, which typically means that he's more on the side of playing. And now we go ahead and jump on into this Golden State versus Houston matchup. Now, these two teams have met twice thus far this season, but Curry did not play in those two games. And so it's really tough for us to draw conclusions from those two matchups. But I do think it's interesting to call out that in those two games, a lot of the Houston Rockets players all hit their unders. Like we look at Sengun, who's currently questionable for this game, played 29 minutes in the last game against Golden State, 16 rebounds in that game, 16 points in that game, which is lower than his season average, and only 8 rebounds in that game, which is lower than his season average as well. We go to the earlier game this season as well, 10 rebounds in that game, which is still a little bit lower than his average, and only 14 points in that game. Again, Curry didn't play in that game, so it did operate a little bit differently with it being the NBA Cup quarterfinals. Like, you imagine these players are going to try to play through these injuries, and you would imagine that they are going to play more minutes as well. Like in that game, only 29 minutes and then only 21 minutes in that game as well. So that is important to call out, but his minutes have been not as trustworthy as we would like thus far this season as well. So that does create a little bit of uncertainty betting on him in general. And so let's go ahead and pull up some of the prop bets that we were getting for him. We're doing this on Underdog, just as an FYI. Like, I don't know, I kind of like the idea on probably betting on some of his unders, but at the same time, he is someone that if the minutes are there, can really crush. It does seem to be a little bit of a toss-up. Like, if we want to bet his under 10.5 rebounds, it's okay, but it's not a good traditional, it's not a good PrizePicks Underdog bet. That'd be a better, traditional sportsbook bet where you're getting more rewarded for betting the under there. It just feels a little bit too thin there. Now, guys, I do want to point out the theme of this slate here is how risk reward it is, okay? Because in all the games, we have a player that could sit, that's a high usage rate player that would drastically change the play that we are going to be on, the prop bet that we're going to be on. Same is true with Jalen Green. So if we get news that Sengun does end up sitting, Jalen Green's overs become the way to go here. But what I currently like is his unders. And so it does kind of suck there. And we know we would be gaining a massive edge if Sengun were to sit by betting on his overs. But again, I tend to believe that these players are going to play if they're questionable, just because it's more of a situation in which you're going to maybe try to play through it. It's a regular season game, but it's not a regular season game with it being the NBA Cup. But let's just talk about it real quick. So, guys, per 36, Jalen Green does average 7 more points per 36 and actually 2 more rebounds per 36 as well with Sengun off the court. And so we look at this, guys. He does average 19.5 points. You add 7 points onto that. That's pretty massive, right? That's a pretty big edge that we're getting there. Now, he is someone that has struggled against Golden State as well. Again, I don't think we need to be taking anything too much away from that, but it is 2 matchups now where he has struggled to shoot against them. 4 for 16, 0 for 4 from 3. And then in that first game, 2 for 13, 1 for 5 from 3. So he has struggled in those games thus far. And so if I had to choose, I could see myself betting his under points here. But again, if Sengun sits, then that's a bet that we should have ran out the opposite on. If you guys are someone that's betting on a traditional sportsbook bet or traditional sportsbook site, I actually don't mind the idea of like if you wanted to bet him like 22.5 points for the over, where you're more just betting on Sengun to sit. I think that'd be a decent way to go about doing it. And then for what it's worth, another player that has struggled in this matchup as well has been Fred VanVleet, but he is also someone that does benefit a decent amount if Sengun were to sit. Those two both see about a 5% bump in their usage as well with Sengun off the court. VanVleet sees his point total go up by 3.6, so pretty decent as well. Again, we look at his two matchups against Golden State. Really not good at all. 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 13 points, 11 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists. And for what it's worth, guys, like a bet where there's a pretty high hit rate in terms of this under hitting. Fred VanVleet has a 72% hit rate to get under 10.5 rebounds and assists. And again, he hasn't done that in 2 games now against the Golden State Warriors. Kind of same thing for Jalen Green as well. 41% hit rate for him on the season, which is, or sorry, it'd be flipped there. So 59% hit rate for his under of 19.5 points. And then we'll just go ahead here and pop up the Golden State Warriors top prop bets that we were getting, guys. I actually don't mind betting on someone like Curry to get over his rebounds and assists here. This bet is one in which if I was trying to find a bet for this game to run back with the Warriors, this would be one that I would like. Has a season hit rate of 79%. And has an opponent hit rate of 65%, so pretty solid there. And we do see that the projection data does like the over here a decent amount. Now, same thing is going to be true with Draymond Green with his points and rebounds, but another one where if we're just kind of looking at his rebounds and assists, he has a good hit rate here as well. About split with this matchup here between Houston. A little bit of a skewed sample size because Curry was out in those games again, so we don't need to go too crazy with the matchup. I know I mentioned it a bunch just now, like a minute ago, but when you're looking at Houston versus Golden State, I think it's a little bit different than looking at the Golden State Warriors production with Curry off the court, because it should spike for a lot of players. Now, Green's role is kind of cemented, like it's not going to change all too much. He is someone that has an 80% hit rate for this over on the season, so I don't hate it. It will be interesting to see the line movement of this, though. Is it going to go up to 12.5? Is it going to fall down to 11.5? I would imagine by afternoon on Wednesday, this will be up to 12.5. That's just a guess, though. Now, real quickly, if you guys are someone that does bet on PrizePicks or Underdog, I do think there's a good chance that we get some edges on some fantasy score prop bets as well in this game. I kind of feel like that's going to, or in these 2 games, I kind of feel like that'll be the way I want to attack a little bit more. Showing you guys right now, like KCP, the under fantasy score, that was the best bet that we had for fantasy score purposes. That would end up kind of seemingly cashing pretty easily. There's 2 minutes left. Better not get unlucky with that. And then Goga. This one easily cashed. It kind of felt like that would be the case. And you guys are seeing right now, we did have some EV bets from the Taco Tuesday bet slip. And so with that, guys, we're about to get into the 9 to 5 bet of the day here for this 2-game slate. Got a 3 slip bet here for you guys, so not attacking it too aggressively. But first, I want to remind you guys of the promo code Keep Cashing. Use that to get 20% off your first 9 to 5 month membership. Make your first month $8. All right, so going to be getting into the 9 to 5 bet of the day. You guys can use this for PrizePicks and Underdog or traditional sportsbook bets. For the early preview video, we are just trying to gain an edge on these lines, you know, kind of hoping that they go the way that we want. Now, this isn't exactly a situation where I think the lines will drastically change. So if you agree with these bets, by all means, go ahead and target them. Clint Capela to get under his 9.5 rebounds. Now, again, if Jalen Johnson does end up sitting, kind of ruins the bet. The likelihood of that bet to hit, more or less a matchup-based thing here. Gets a tough matchup going against the Timberwolves, going against the New York Knicks here. And part of that, I think it would correlate with Towns getting his over 12.5 rebounds. And then Trae Young to get lower than 11.5 assists. Again, he is someone that does see his production spike and take dips in terms of his assists. So it could be very much hit or miss there. But that's going to do it, guys, for this 2-game slate. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the coverage. Make sure to give a like and subscribe. Be on the lookout, if you guys are a 9 to 5 member, for some better bets popping in the board tomorrow. Some good EV bets. Again, I do think we're going to have some good fantasy score prop bets. We saw that on the day today as I'm recording this. We saw SGA and Giannis have some big prop line differences between PrizePicks and Underdog. So just take a peek on that. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.